Tapped, a Magic the Gathering talk show where we prize ourselves on having a high-quality conversation about the world's greatest collectible card game. I am Scott Kane, your happy host for the evening, and as always, I'm joined by Matthew Hooks.
Howdy.
How are you doing tonight, Matthew?
I'm doing great.
Good.
This is my third shoot this week, so...
Oh, busy guy,
Yeah,
huh?
I feel like I'm in game mode right now.
That's good,
Just
good.
going straight ahead.
You're doing a great job setting us up tonight, and are you excited to talk about some topics, huh?
Yeah. I feel like there's a couple topics I'll have a lot to say about.
Okay,
So, yeah,
looking forward to it.
Let's do it.
Looking forward to it. Tonight we're also joined by my very good friend David. Now, David, we spoke before the show, and it's my understanding that you've been playing Magic the Gathering since the 19th century. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah.
I was one of the initial wizards of the coast. Now, it was the North Coast.
Okay.
Little known coast off of Lake Erie.
Okay.
But, yeah, I was one of the first.
Well, it's nice to have a little bit of a venerated veteran of the game joining
Thank
us
you.
today. How many digits are in your DCI number?
6.
Okay, so I was betting on 3,
Yeah.
but 6 is good. 6
Get at
is
me in
good
the
too.
comments if you have less.
Yeah.
We also have joining us tonight my very good friend Eric. And Eric, you, like myself, took a very long break from Magic at one point. You took a whopping 15 years off from the game.
I did.
Yeah. You told me you had a little bit of a funny story about when you came back to the game after such a long hiatus. Do you want to share that?
Yeah, we were doing a Born of the Gods draft.
Okay.
And in one of my first matches, I attempted to double block and then assign combat damage as if my creatures were banded.
Oh.
So I thought at the time, banding was pretty much how all my creatures attacked.
Yeah.
I knew banding was bad from the very beginning.
Did you talk to Richard
All the way
C.
back to 3
Garfield about
digits.
it? Yeah.
I feel like, let's not get too far into banning. I feel like the rest of the podcast could be just us talking about how it actually works.
Yeah, I still don't understand it.
Yeah.
So, well, as longtime viewers will probably know, this is a talk show dedicated to talking about the most popular topics in Magic the Gathering, and we're going to go through 5 of them right now. I'm excited. Are you guys excited?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's get going. Tonight's first segment, called Is It Good?, concerns a new card that was just released called Risk Factor. Now, Risk Factor is a Punisher card, and if you're not aware, Punisher cards give your opponent the choice about how the card is going to resolve. Examples include Browbeat or the Tribute mechanic from the Born of the Gods set, as we mentioned a moment ago. Historically disfavored, I don't know that we've ever really seen a Punisher card that's, been played frequently or seen a lot of action. However, with Guilds of Ravnica, we've seen a card called Risk Factor see play not only in Standard, but also in Modern. So, Risk Factor, guys. Is it good?
I'm interested, what is the modern deck that's seeing play in right now?
If it's a burn.
Well, I could talk about it a little bit.
Sure.
Let's talk about why Punishers are bad in general for
Okay,
one
yeah,
quick
that's
second.
a good
right?
place
Sure.
to start.
So just to baseline it. So the problem with giving your opponent the choice is that the card is never what you want it to be in the moment, right? Because your opponent is smart. You're playing against a person who also understands Magic most of the time.
Yeah, sure.
And so they will understand the situation that they're in when you play a card like that as well as they do, right? So if you want 3 cards, they're likely to choose the other option.
Right.
If you want the damage, they're likely to give you the cards.
It's always the worst case scenario.
Right. So you have to be okay with it always being the worst case scenario.
Right.
So I'm not sure if it's good or not. Just to hop into it, to go back to what modern deck it's in. So it started out kind of as the first kind of breakthrough card deck that had Guilds cards in it in Modern, which was the Runaway Red deck,
Right.
which came with a package of 4 Arclight Phoenix,
Right.
4 Runaway Steamkin, and
Steamkin,
four Risk Factors, along with a bunch of other kind of really weird cards. So it had Desperate Ritual, it had Pyretic Ritual, it has Lightning Bolts and all that kind of stuff. So the whole
Right.
Faithless Looting. So the whole idea with this deck was basically to go off by playing a ton of rituals on top of each other, get away to discard your Arclight Phoenixes, and then use rituals and things like that to bring it back.
So this is the modern equivalent of the deck that Stan was interested in playing in
That's
Standard,
right.
right? Because
Yes.
he
Right.
in the last episode, he brought out the Runaway Steamkin as his
Right.
most favorite card from the set.
Right.
Sure.
Cool. All right. Yeah, I mean, I've definitely seen that modern deck played, now that I'm thinking about it. And it does have turns where it just plays through a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool.
So Scott, I played that against you the last time that we played Magic. What did you think about that
I
deck?
didn't care for it, I'll tell you that. It was not pleasant.
Right, but you also were like, why would you play this deck? Because it actually was kind of terrible.
Yeah, it didn't perform against me. my take on risk factor is that it's really good if your opponent has less than 10 life, and it's pretty mediocre under every other circumstance. It feels like a variation on Fateful Hour, I think was the mechanic from one of the Innistrad sets, where if you've got your opponents on the ropes, it's really great for that like knockout uppercut, but you can't lead with it. It's a bad jab,
Yes.
you know?
Yeah.
I think the fact that it has jumpstart is a big part of where I view it, its power coming from. The first time you cast it, it may end up being a burn spell. But later on in the game, you've got these, a couple of risk factors sitting in your graveyard. You're able to discard a land that you top deck, and this time it may have to be a draw spell, and you're generally drawing into more burn to close out the game.
That's an excellent point, Blush.
It feels kind of like you're either making the decision to take the damage now, or maybe next turn you're going to take double the damage.
Yeah, that's right.
And then there's always
The deck archetype that David was discussing a moment ago, too, discarding a card is not a disadvantage in that deck. If you're holding an Arc-like Phoenix or a Faithless Looting, the cost of discard is negligible, if not a benefit, of jump-starting your risk factor. So.
Yeah, I will say the thing that I found in Modern with it is that there wasn't really enough time to use it. That's how I felt when I played the deck. And granted, I only played it for, I think, probably 15 games before I decided to take the Arc. I was mostly interested in breaking Arc-like Phoenix and see what that was about. So I kind of moved on and have moved into the Is It version of that. It doesn't run risk factor, but that's kind of a different topic. But the real downfall that I found was that even discarding, that's a plus. Being able to play it twice with Flash Bad is a plus. That's my little pet name for Jumpstart.
That's pretty good.
Nice. So that there just wasn't enough time to really take advantage of it, and just kind of felt like it wasn't really doing much in my hand. The thing that I would say is what's happened over the last couple of weeks since that's come out, kind of from watching the way that this deck has evolved, the runaway red deck seems to have mostly replaced risk factor with lava spikes. If that tells you anything about like what that particular deck really wants,
it just wants more burn.
It just wants the burn.
Just wants more damage.
And it's a 1 mana spell instead of a 3 mana spell, and so it's just like, I think it's just more about velocity. And from what I can tell, after that initial splash in Modern anyway, it has really kind of gotten engineered out of the format.
You think it was kind of just a blip on the radar, and that in the long term, it's not going to see that much
for
play?
now anyway. It seems like
because if you want Arclight to be good, you need at least 3 mana, which means at best you're getting at turn 3, right?
Right, although the trick with that in Modern anyway, again, is running Pyretic Ritual and Desperate Ritual, so you're playing card and Metamorphose too.
Sure.
You have that whole package where you're just playing cards on top of each other, so you can kind of go off with 2 mana.
Okay, yeah, that's a good
because
point.
of that,
because you're getting one from every ritual that you do. You're getting an additional mana. Yeah, okay, that's a good point.
An observation that I'm going to make, and we're going to talk a little bit more about Dredge or Graveyard Matters decks later in the cast, but Jumpstart, Flash Bad, that's really funny, is something that is made a lot better just by self-mill, right?
Yeah.
So normally if you're self-milling and the card goes in the bin, right, if it doesn't have a graveyard-sensitive ability, it's kind of like a null set. It doesn't really do anything for you. I think one of the reasons that risk factor has a little bit more of a ceiling on it is that if it goes into the graveyard, or if it's countered, or if it's just resolved once, it's just as happy to be there as it is to be in your hand. And that gives it a little bit more reach.
Yeah.
Browbeat doesn't do anything from your graveyard, whereas risk factor can. Right?
Yeah, I'm just thinking, what in general makes this a better Punisher card than other Punisher cards? And I think perhaps, like, just to start that conversation, like, when you're playing a burn-ish deck or an aggressive red deck, you generally either want more damage or cards.
Or more cards,
right?
right?
And
Yeah.
so, like, because you're either out of gas and you need gas, or you just want to hit their face with something.
Yeah, so maybe if I had to answer the question that you just posed, I would say that both of the cards' modal abilities here are synergistic in specifically a red burn deck.
Yeah,
right?
they serve that deck very well.
Yeah, and when I think about the only other Punisher card I can think that's ever even seen play is that what was the name of that Gruul creature from Born of the Gods? It was a 3/3 that could enter the...
Xenagos' Acolyte or something like
that's
that.
exactly
It's
right.
like either you take 3 damage, or you take some damage, or it comes in with an extra counter.
I believe it's slightly different than that. I think that it either comes in as a 4/4 with trample, or a 3/3 with haste
That's right.
and trample.
Yeah, you're right.
I mean, there was long conversations between us and on Reddit about Sin Prodder as well. So
that's another good one.
recent
Yeah.
Punisher.
I'm not familiar with that one. What's what are the modes?
So I think when it enters the battlefield, you either get to draw a card or deal some damage. I mean, Dave
okay.
may remember.
I think that's basically what. Yeah, Sin Prodder was sort of like a.
Similar to Risk Factor in that way.
It was similar to Risk Factor and a little bit like a combination of that and Dark Confidant. If I remember right, it was sort of like take a look at a card at the top of your library and it does damage, or you get to draw it. Basically,
isn't there another one, another red card? I think it's like Havoc Devil or something Devil, where
Vexing Devil.
Vexing Devil, yes.
Yeah.
It comes in and it either does damage and then gets sacrificed, or it stays as the creature. Right?
Yeah.
So this is another card that kind of moves in and out of burn decks in Modern, basically, or zoo decks in Modern, based on what people think, how much stuff they're trying to do with 1-mana spells. So there was a lot when Pelt Collector came out.
I
right
love
now,
that combo.
Magic
Magic
all about
Aids,
that, too.
yeah. Magic Aids had a nice take on the Pelt Collector thing with Vexing Devil in it.
Yeah.
But the one thing I would say is that you guys have been playing a lot more Standard than I have. Have you been running into... So I was just looking through the 5.0 list from today before we came on camera, and I just wanted to see kind of like where it was in the metagame. It's definitely appearing in Standard as a 4 of both main deck and sideboard in different decks, along with another Punisher card that I think some people have forgot about, which is called Sword Point Diplomacy.
Yes.
Right, I've
from
seen
Ixalan.
that too. Yeah.
So I don't know if you guys have
It's a
encountered
Punisher.
this.
I haven't played against it, but I think I watched Saffron Olive play a version of this deck. It was either on the stream or one of the deck tag things. It was surprisingly good. I believe he 5-0'd with it.
Wow.
I think it's just like it's like take all of the Punisher cards and put them together, and somehow that gets better.
Yeah,
to some extent,
or at least finding the Punisher cards that have inherent synergy with one another, right?
Right.
Yeah, Sword Point Diplomacy was pretty bad and limited. I'm going to tell you that right now.
Terrible.
And it basically saw 0 play anywhere, as far as I remember.
Right, yeah. I'm excited to see... I mean, one of the reasons that I love this silly little game of ours is that you always get new ways to play old cards.
I mean, Standard's pretty powerful these days, but when you look at, what could make a card like Risk Factor good in Standard as opposed to where it's not good enough to make the cut in Modern is we have Flashback in Modern.
That's right.
We don't have Flashback in Standard. Jumpstart is pretty powerful. And the cards are maybe not all that powerful. Like they were pretty careful with the mechanic.
Right.
But that seems to be the one that's made kind of the biggest splash and has the most ceiling in a format like Standard.
I mean, turns out being able to cast a card twice is good.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Go figure.
Yeah, right.
All right, well, having discussed a little bit about Risk Factor's impact in both Standard and Modern, we're going to turn to a new product offering from Wizards of the Coast. Ooh, exciting, right? Yeah. And we're talking about a set called Ultimate Masters. Ultimate Masters is a compilation set featuring some of the most popular cards from the entire history of Magic the Gathering. It's set to be released on December 7th, which is more or less 1 month from our recording date today. And each box of Ultimate Masters is going to come with 24 15-card packs, 1 Ultimate Box Topper card, and this is perhaps the most important point, a manufacturer's suggested retail price of $335.76 per box.
Yeah.
I'm doing the blinking white guy. Like,
right, yeah.
Wow, that's
so
eye-watering.
Yeah. Obviously, Ultimate Masters, or as I call it, is quite expensive. But the question is it worth it? What are we getting? Is this a good idea for the game? What do you think? Blush, why don't we start with you on this one?
I gotta say, I am wholly disinterested in this product.
Okay, all right.
I bought a lot of Master sets in the past. I loved Eternal Masters. I'm looking forward to see what the draft environment looks like for this set before I make a final judgment on it. But as far as like pre-ordering boxes, I'm just kind of checked out on it.
Well, query though, is there really going to be people meaningfully drafting this set? It's like you're purchasing cardboard that's worth its weight in gold. Are you going to let your grubby friend's hands run all over it?
Hopefully the fact that they're selling 3-packs at retail locations will kind of incentivize that. I can see people going out and buying it or maybe getting it as a gift for Christmas. I think that probably is the majority of the reason why they're doing this is for, fourth quarter Christmas sales.
David, I don't want to put you in a box, but you're a little bit of a finance guy. You seem to know your way around your investments and
try.
Just basic financial calculations. Is this just a ploy from Wizards of the Coast to get people to open up new lines of credit?
I think that it's just to make sure that consumer spending goes up overall. So they're going to take this tiny population of Magic players and they're just going to squeeze as much money out of them as they can in Q4, and we're just going to ride into 2019.
That's right.
I will say one thing that was interesting about Blush said is that this is a guy who really does love Master sets. I think
absolutely.
way more than anybody else.
Yeah.
I've drafted Eternal Masters with The only reason I ever drafted Eternals Masters was because he was like, I have boxes, we're doing it,
Yeah.
let's get together and do it. And it was a lot of fun. Wow, that retail price is super high.
I can't believe it.
I do have to say,
Unbelievable.
there's a ton of reprints in here that I've been waiting for,
Sure.
personally, to get a hold of for Modern. I don't think that that's going to make me buy sealed boxes of this, just because I'm just going to wait for the singles to come out and buy the cards that I want. It's way too high risk for me to be like, I really want 4 Noble Hierarchs for my collection.
So that's kind of my follow-up question for you. You mentioned Noble Hierarchs, right?
Yeah.
But you, just as a representative of the average Modern playing man, right? What are the cards that you would actually want to round out your collection with that are being printed in this set?
So 2 that come to mind really quick are, so like I said, Noble Hierarch.
Yeah.
I've among our group of friends, I'm sort of known as a person who never plays green.
True.
Especially in Modern. And part of the
True.
reason is I don't have Noble Hierarchs
And
to
they're-
be able
and
to
they're
ramp into them
$80.
properly, and they're $80
Yeah.
a piece.
Okay.
And so I've just been waiting and waiting and waiting for that. I really want to get some number of Cavern of Souls,
Yes.
which is in
Yeah.
this set as
Yes.
well. I mean, other than that, that's kind of I basically have the other staples that are in this set already. I have Snapcaster and Lily and all that kind of stuff, because over the years and over the other Master sets, I've sort of put the work into getting all the cards that I wanted. But I
Right.
do need those last couple things to be able to open up a couple more deck types.
I would say Liliana of the Veil would be the one that I would chase after, simply because I play a lot of black decks in Modern. I've never sat down, taken out my checkbook, and bit my lip and written enough cash order to purchase them. Maybe this will be a good opportunity for that. Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? One of the things that drives me a little crazy about Ultimate Masters is just the raw, naked, nominal figure of the price tag for a box, $335, right? Do you guys have any thoughts or insights about the kind of ever-inflating costs of Magic the Gathering products?
Yeah, I kind of feel like this is more of a a readjustment for inflation going on here, where they're trying to both simultaneously increase the price of the pack while also avoid the emotional blowback of increasing the prices on a product that people seem to love by increasing the price and then ending that product line, at least in name, in the current time. So
kind of going out on a high note, but a very high note.
A high note that sets precedent and also,
Yeah, because
hopefully makes people happy.
That's a good point. One thing that I've been noticing is that there have been boxes being sold for way less than MSRP, which does sort of push up the acceptable price even more than just saying, like, here's a really expensive thing. Like, all of a sudden, a $250 box sounded not crazy.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, so that's an interesting point.
I remember buying 2 boxes of Modern Masters 1 back in 2013 from like a friend of my dad's who managed to have access to it, and they were $180 a box. And I was like, this is so insane, but it's going to be so much more. And so I got it, and they were great, but this is like a whole other thing.
Yeah.
I think that the one thing that's interesting about what you're saying too is, like, we don't know what the next product is going to be.
Right.
That's going to fulfill the reprint need.
Right.
So it's possible that part of what you're saying is that too, where they say, okay, well, we shipped you a set that's all reprints, and that was $335. We're going to ship you a set now that's half reprints, in the conspiracy mode or something like that. And that's going to be $200 a box, and you're going to be grateful for it because it's not what Ultimate Masters was.
And maybe, like, I think the idea, like, that they're doing a conspiracy set with a bunch of reprints, that, like, where it's like, but it's fun. It's $200, but it's fun. Like, you could get a box and do it with your friends. Like, that's the whole idea. So, like,
God, I love conspiracy so much. It's my favorite. Yeah, it's so fun.
It is a sort of an interesting, maybe not nefarious, but there's like a wink and a nod, like, where they're like, but we can do kind of, we can, like, get a new spin on making you pay a lot of money for cardboard.
Yeah, a new way to make you feel okay about basically wasting money. Right. Yeah, that's great.
The one thing I would say is I don't really have a problem with Wizards doing stuff like this.
Yeah.
Honestly, I understand a lot of people say it's a money grab. What you're saying, where it sort of like moves the goalposts for people who are kind of completists or collectors, right? Unfortunately, it's one of the ways that they have to generate value within the ecosystem that they've created. They can either make new products, they can reprint old products, or they can do special versions of the old products.
Yeah.
And so I don't really have a problem with them experimenting with this, with the understanding. The thing that I think is too bad is people, when they get really upset when Wizards says straight up, we understand that this product's not for everybody.
Yeah.
There's that sort of like inherent elitism in that note, which is sort of disappointing in some ways, but
Well, in the language of economics, I guess a rational person would not be upset by the release so long as there was no opportunity cost to it.
Right.
But what you might be alluding to is people who are like, why aren't you printing real product that I, as a like top hat wearing, cigar chomping, monocle wearing,
you light your cigars with Liliana the Veil.
That's right, yeah.
Big wig.
As a poor member of the underclass, right, can't access. The real problem is not that rich people get nice things. The real problem is I'm not getting product. You're not spending time developing product for me. And maybe there's some merit to that. I don't know. I do guarantee that, as David suggested, Wizards of the Coast will continue to do whatever it takes to make as much money as possible. And so I look forward to that. That'll be good. All right, we're moving on now to what I think will be my favorite part of our cast tonight, which is a little game I came up with that I've called Talk-lemaggot. The rules are pretty simple, I guess. I took 3 cards from the Guilds of Ravnica set, and they're 3 of the more familiar cards. You know what I mean? We're not talking about Iron Shell Beetle here, or whatever the hell that card is. And what I did is I took the text from those cards and fed it back and forth through a series of language translators online for comedic results, right? And what came out at the end of it is kind of a strange hodgepodge of the English language and auto-translate options. And the game is going to be, our 3 lovely guests are going to, based on the clues that I give them, try to correctly identify what each card is. And just to let you know, the stakes are pretty serious. I've pledged one of my many abrupt decays to the winner of this game. Winner will be calculated on a total number of points. If there's a 3-way tie, no one gets anything.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
No one gets anything.
Yeah,
that's right.
We don't get a third of an abrupt decay.
The children go hungry.
Yeah, on the next episode, I'll cut up in my infinite Solomonic wisdom an abrupt decay into 3
Guys, we
pieces.
should definitely know who we should concede to get the max.
Yeah, right.
Oh
yeah,
my God! You angle shooting monsters, get out of here!
Guys, I need the pro points.
Yeah.
I'm really close to going bronze.
Okay, I love it. All right, so first card. This card's type is magic, so that's helpful. That's good.
Okay.
The flavor text on this card is, please be careful not to let the angels eat bird food. The text on this card is, 4/4 tokens and alerts constitute...
Buzz. Divine Visitation?
It is Divine Visitation.
Yeah.
All right, we got there. Yeah,
nice.
The flavor text tipped me off, and I was like, I think that, and then as soon as you said 4/4, I'm like, knew it.
Yeah.
Got it.
Don't let them eat bird food.
Please
Can we
don't,
dwell
yeah.
on that for a minute?
Yeah. I'm trying to imagine what the art on this card actually looks like. I don't know what the flavor text is or what the art looks like.
The real art is kind of like, it's not great. It's not the best art in the set. It's sort of like an angel
a bunch
in the
of
foreground,
angels, coming
and
sort
they're
of-
in the background, and then there's sort of a fountain.
Yeah, there's a fountain in the
middle.
center, and they're sort of descending upon the fountain, and I think there's somebody looking up and being like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah. Is it a
Fisherman?
Yeah, it might be. Yeah.
The fuck is this fucking shit?
Yeah.
My bird food.
Yeah, why?
Just for comedic effect, I want to finish reading the text
Please.
on
Okay,
it.
yeah,
right?
yeah, absolutely.
So the rules text on this card is 4/4 tokens and alerts constitute the creature of multiple Caucasian angels under the rule of God. So if you don't want to slam that in limited, I don't even know what you're
Thought
doing.
we weren't
with
going to talk
yourself.
about the midterms, Scott.
Yeah, that's right.
I think that
Yeah.
requires the old white monosymbol.
The text of the card translated to God visits. I
God
thought that was
visits.
pretty good.
That's so good.
Just for shits and giggles, what do you guys think about the card Divine Visitation?
How much mana is it? Is it 6
It's
mana?
3 generic,
5.
2
5,
white.
okay.
Yeah.
I think if it was 1 less mana, it would see like infinitely more play.
Well, that's true of a lot of cards.
Yeah.
Sure. No, but I mean like
Hot take. Cheap cards are good.
But sure, but
No, I
but it's
get your
like it's
point.
like just outside of the realm of even Guilds of Ravnica like limited. Like I'm like, man, I just need like 5 cards that do anything with that, and I don't know if there's quite enough.
I think that to your point, David, I'm sorry,
Sure.
but the Wizards has printed consistently 5 CMC mythic white enchantments that do nothing when they enter the battlefield, but then win the game on the next turn.
Yeah.
This is like the new example of that, right?
Yeah.
The only way to make this work in terms of like it's going to affect the game that turn is you have to be able to generate a token, at will or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's kind of hard to do sometimes,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, it turns Secure the Wastes into Entreat the Angels in modern blue-white control.
It's not bad. Or
You just play and treat the angels, but
Yeah.
yeah.
It's definitely in the Miracles deck.
What's that that Orzhov enchantment from the Kaladesh block with the revolt trigger on
Hidden
it.
stockpile?
Hidden
Yeah.
stockpile. That's the card that I think of when I look at Divine Visitation. Sacrifice my angel, create another angel scry. You know what I mean? Just kind of
Right.
crazy
Is
stuff
it,
like
is
that.
it creature tokens, though? Or is it any token?
I believe it's creature token,
Creature
but
tokens.
that would meet the requirement either way.
Okay, yeah,
Because
yeah.
hidden stockpile.
Yeah,
is a
okay.
creature token.
I'm just starting to like Rolodex in my head. Like, is there anything that just spits out a bunch of tokens? Period. But if it's just creature
Or
tokens,
maybe
then
like
that
a
limits it
Rabble
for-
Master or something like that.
Sure,
would be
sure.
good, you know?
I definitely passed it yesterday to take a direct current in draft.
Yeah, I mean, in
So, hey,
limited,
That's yeah.
in limited, it's pretty hard. It's
Yeah.
hard to pick up.
Also, you know, we're talking about jumpstart cards like direct current, great jumpstart card.
We're going to move on to the second card here. And I'm going to do the same order because it's like harder to figure out
Yeah.
here. Okay, so this card type is a moment. The flavor text on this card is, "It is not your time. Blade is required, troops." And the text on the card, the rules text, is, "Gets the chance of critter control, immortal. Then proceed further. I lost the game. At the end of the game."
It's the red white. Take another turn, but I cannot think of the name of it right now.
Well, then I don't think you can think of the answer to
Oh,
the card.
I think I know the name.
I can't think of the name.
Chance for Glory.
Yeah,
That's right.
awesome.
Yeah, I was going to give him another opportunity,
Oh, okay, well,
but you
that's
swooped
okay, you
in
can
there.
have it.
You got it.
Well, he's assured to
I've been known to swoop.
He's been known to swoop. He's been
And
known to
we've
swoop.
definitely defined
Better
that.
card titles than me. I'm like, I know what this card is.
Yeah.
No idea what.
So
the name
when
is.
I did some practice rounds, the reason that I chose high-profile cards from a recent set is this is really hard.
Yeah.
I went back. I actually went through the Ultimate Masters list, which has the most famous cards
Sure.
from the entire history of Magic the Gathering, and it's like I don't know what any of these cards are. You know what I mean? It doesn't make any sense. It's hard to figure out.
Right.
Yeah. So you're right. It is Chance for Glory.
I think the only reason I knew the name of that one is because I'm dying to break that card. Like that, there's a Gideon deck, like a Gideon tribal deck that.
Oh
has
yeah, we've seen Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, play it to moderate
Yeah,
success.
I think it was a 3/2. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I loved it though.
It's just a funny card, you know. And the part where it says creatures gain indestructible, not until end of turn, just forever.
Can't believe
like,
that.
I love it. I'm like that's definitely errata for sure.
They chose
No.
not to. They
Yeah, no,
chose not to.
I know they didn't, but it's because they were embarrassed.
It's an embarrassing.
I don't
thing.
think so. I think that one was on purpose. I think that the invert card was definitely an accident.
Oh yeah, that was
Yeah.
for sure. I just don't know why they would change basically like the schemata for every other card, which is
Because it's a
until end of
card
turn.
that is not going to be played.
Okay.
And that's
They were like,
it.
"Hey guys, I got a new design.
They
It's
were
for
like-
a card that no one will play."
They're like, everyone will think this is sweet and nobody will play
Yeah.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you sound like a traveling salesman. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like going town to town selling snake oil. Be
Yeah.
like, oh, you got the vapors, huh?
Yeah.
You know?
Drink this, and then don't come back to me when you die.
Yeah, no,
Well, Matt,
warranty
there's
not
definitely
included.
a deck with Chance for Glory, Glorious End, Days Undoing.
Yeah,
If you keep ending the turn before you lose the
Yeah,
game,
right, exactly.
You don't have to
You
worry
don't need to
about it.
worry
I think that's such a funny archetype of a deck where it's just like, and then I just take a bunch of turns, but I promise I'm not going to lose at the end of this.
Yeah.
Isn't that card actually seeing play in that 5-color Lich deck in Standard?
Yes, well,
Oh, yeah.
because that's an abusable thing in
Right.
that way, right?
Yeah.
I love that deck too. I love the janks. You know what I mean? Like,
It's a janky card.
it's not even that I don't. It's not the height of Magic. These jank brews, right? But it's just such a creative expression. It's so
Yeah.
fun. Someone sat down with a pile of cards and said, "I'm going to abuse the rules of this game into having some fun." Right?
Rainbow
now.
Lich, I'll call it.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Well, and the guy who designed, I think Ali Antrazi designed that deck and
Oh.
won a regional PT.
Yeah.
with
It's
it.
I
a
did know that.
legitimate
It's
deck.
legit. I don't think everybody can play it because I think it's very difficult.
David, I
but,
consider myself to be a player of the same caliber as Alion. How do you say it?
Antrazi?
Antrazi? Yeah. Just same caliber.
Sure, yeah,
Absolutely,
sure.
for sure. The text, translated text of Chance for Glory's name was Fame Opportunity, which I thought was pretty good. This card does not have flavor text, but I'm going to start with the card type. It is the Soldiers of the Biology Pixie. The text of the card is Teacher, Turnkey Combat, 1/1, Goblin Creature token first. A token offensive at the end of this
Legion
battle.
War Boss.
Yeah, Legion War Boss, yeah. That's okay, we can tie.
Yeah,
we're
We
still
don't
losing
get
him.
anything, we both got it. Yeah.
you're right. It is Legion War Boss, which translates to Boss of the War Corps, which I really
Boss of
appreciate.
the War Corps?
Hell yeah.
Yeah, it sounds pretty
I like
metal,
that guy.
right? Yeah. How do you like that card? You were a Rabble Master fan back in the
I was.
day, right?
It's not as good as Rebel Master, clearly, but I have definitely run into that card a couple of times in the last day or two in draft.
Yeah.
And been severely disappointed at how difficult it was to get around.
Yeah, must answer card.
It's like it's way more must answer than it seems like it's going to be.
Yeah,
Mostly
yeah.
because I play a lot of decks in guilds limited that are the Boros, or
Right.
X1s basically, and so I can't block the tokens because then I'm just giving cards away. So
Right.
then I have to sit there and figure out a way to deal with it in a different way, and it's really hard to keep up with.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
So good card. I'm sure it's playable at some point in time.
Do you think constructed playable?
I think it's on the likely to happen list.
It feels
Yeah.
like there's a goblin deck that will come along that'll
Yeah.
find a slot for it.
Well, I mean, we've got the next Ravnica sets. I feel like we've already seen a bunch of elves that are playable, at least in standard, for like the elf ball deck. I bet there's going to be some goblin synergies coming up as well.
Yeah, I wonder if there's Goblin Grenade being one of the traditional powerhouse cards in mono red goblins. This is another token generator, just like the Rabble Master, right? I mean, if you're going to sacrifice a goblin, might as well be a free one that just kind of got shit out by a 3-drop. So
One of the interesting spots of Rebel Master back when it was in Standard was as a sideboard card and 4 of sideboard card in control decks, where you would just bring it in after game 1 because your opponent would have removed all of their creature removal and won the game over with Rebel Master. I think that this could play a similar role.
delightfully devilish. I like that a lot. That's good. All right. Well, thank you for playing my silly little game. I really appreciate
So
your
great.
patience. Yeah, it's kind of fun, right?
Yep.
It's a good one. But all silly little games have to come to an end, and we have to play serious little games like Magic the Gathering in the constructed modern format. The format, I think, of sober-minded, somber, adult gentlemen, right?
Yeah.
And on that topic, I was peeling through the results recently of a Star City Games event that took place in Dallas in late October. And I love Star City Games. It's one of their first big events in the wake of the release of Guilds of Ravnica. And I'm going to give a shout out to the fella, Peter Hallman, who won the event playing Death Shadow. But what I was struck by, looking at the results in the top 32 for that event, was the prevalence of dredge. But not just normal dredge. We're talking about dredge that's now playing a full play set of Creeping Chill in the main board.
Yeah.
Limited, borderline unplayable, uncommon in black, Creeping Chill 4 of in the main board. I did the math on it, and they had a full set. They had I think 7 of the top 32 cards were dredge, and they all played at least 2 plus Creeping Chill. That's pretty crazy to me.
Yep.
So I want to do a little survey of you guys. That's the biggest striking change in the modern format that I saw after the release of Guilds of Ravnica. Dredge getting a new toy that can do a 24-point life swing for 0 mana is a pretty big deal.
Yep.
What do you guys think Modern looks like now that we're in the post-Guilds of Ravnica kind of landscape? David, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, just to talk about dredge for a minute.
Yeah.
I think that, that kind of feels like a mistake, right?
It's a whoopsie.
Yeah,
it might
a little
be a
bit.
whoopsie.
Yeah,
right?
when you put it at 24 life swing, because I'm thinking about it as the damage, but it's not just that because you also get the 3 life. Like,
Yeah.
Imagine playing burn against that and having that happen.
I would
You know how many
scoop,
more
I'd
cards you have to
fold.
draw?
Yeah,
To make that
an infinite
happen.
number. What about risk factor?
So one thing that I will say, I think that was a huge spike because it was really obvious that it had a home.
Right.
One thing that was really weird to me about that is that card is written differently from a card that is in the same set. I think it's called Blood Operative. Is the card that has a recursive ability to it too, but you're only allowed to return it to your hand if you surveil.
Right.
Yes.
So they could have easily written Creeping Chill to say if you surveil it into the graveyard.
No, they
No?
could not.
They couldn't?
Because there are other ways of self-milling cards that are not technically surveilling.
Right, but what I'm saying is if they didn't
If they had done that,
didn't want it to be affected to trigger off of dredge.
Oh,
So they had
yeah,
one
yeah.
card that was written to trigger off surveil that did a very similar thing, where they have another card that was written to be broader so that it could basically it felt like they knew what they were doing. Is kind of what I'm getting at.
I reached the same conclusion.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, I think in this instance they did. There was one other sort of oddity from the set based around Undergrowth where 2 equivalent undergrowth effects are written in differently.
ways.
Yeah. And it doesn't. You're right. It doesn't feel like it was just a copy editing error.
Right.
This feels like they were like, oh yeah, we were going to give Dredge a new toy, or
Right.
or even just that somebody was like, graveyard. Let's make it just any graveyard kind of shenanigans. You know.
Anyone who wants to do some fun self-mill stuff, here
Yeah.
it is. And then
Yeah.
Dredge is like, excuse me,
Yeah.
I can put 12 cards into it, into
dude.
my,
Right, yeah.
And I'm
my
gonna do it
graveyard every
right
turn
now,
and do it
right?
for free.
Yeah.
And it seems crazy. I think that Modern is very good at adjusting to most things, especially in the kind of era of Modern that we're in right now. This isn't the type of thing like Eldrazi Winter where suddenly you can die on turn 2
Yeah,
and it's
right.
just insane amounts of mana cheating and all these things. I think that people can adjust by deploying Graveyard Hate in different ways against Dredge in order to make sure that doesn't happen. Surgical Extraction is something that people were using in the subsequent weeks. So if you look at, there's been actually 3 major Modern tournaments in the time period since Guilds has come out. There was Dallas, Charlottesville, which is another SCG Open, and then Grand Prix Detroit, Grand Prix Atlanta, which was last weekend. And Dredge has kind of gone down in the top 32 in each of those.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah,
Okay.
because
It was a huge spike at the beginning, but then it's
7,
leveled
3,
off.
and 3 was what my count was as far as the top 32 meta share goes. 10% of the top 32 is still a lot. In Modern
right,
anyway,
for sure.
it's kind of a lot. And but I think people are kind of dealing with it. But what's going to happen now is it's going to be in that zone of like Affinity, where Affinity is kind of there. It's a good deck. People start packing Graveyard Hate. It goes away.
Yeah.
Or not Graveyard Hate. Artifact Hate. It goes away. And then people get lazy. They take the Artifact Hate out, and then suddenly Affinity comes back. It feels like Dredge is going to enter that same kind of cycle.
How many decks do you think Modern can support that require those answers, though? Like, how many super aggro decks that require specific answers in the sideboard can the format support before it just breaks down?
That's a really good question, Blush. Yeah.
And I think that's with the super aggro style of Modern at this point. I mean, and there are control decks, which is almost a rare thing for Modern occasionally.
It's
but-
extremely rare in the life of Modern.
Exactly.
But in the last year or so, it's been pretty normal for there to be
At
control
least
decks. as
one.
part
Can
of
I
it.
try to tease out your question a little bit just to kind of explore it?
Please.
So, if we see a bunch of different types of aggro decks in Modern that attack on different axes, right, where the hose solutions to them require specific and disparate cards. Artifacts decks hate Stony Silence, right? I can't think of what a hose for Dredge would be. A graveyard, maybe like a Nile Spellbomb or some.
Leyline of the Void.
Leyline of the Void.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. But the point is, those are 2 very different cards, and they're almost unplayable next to each other. Are you asking is there a carrying capacity for sideboards in Modern, right? Is there a point where you can't squeeze any more silver bullet solutions for these way too effective aggressive cards or decks?
Exactly, and I really think that is highlighted by the fact that you see a lot of Meddling Mage play at this point. It's a sideboard card that you can bring in for some decks that allow you to just name the card that you can't beat.
Sure. And it's
And
more
I think
versatile, right?
It's more versatile, but it also requires the skill barrier on it is much higher than something that answers it like Leyline of the Void, if you can fit that in. So,
True.
That
Okay.
makes me think of another card from Guilds, which is it Unmoored Ego, where you can name a card and it just takes him out?
Yeah.
3 mana, 1 blue black. Yeah, I wonder if that was printed with what you're saying in mind. Like,
Well, I mean, it's a more expensive version of Surgical Extraction.
sure, but but it's in black blue, which is just if we're talking about control and Modern, like I'm just like starting to roll a decks through the cards, at this point.
Well, you got like Lost Legacy or Legacy Lost. and
Yeah, I mean, the
some
problem
others.
with all these cards is that they're all card disadvantaged
Right.
unless you time them right. And that's what's good about Surgical Extraction is that if you combine it with other discard, you can get a sense of what's in someone's hand. The real 1-2 punch is I'm going to Thought Seize you, and then I'm going to see what's in your hand, and then I'm going to find a way to get the other one into your graveyard, and then I'm going to get a card out of your hand and out of your graveyard and out of your deck,
David, you're
so that
dirty,
you get it easy.
dirty man.
That's just
That's
what you want to do if
brutal.
you can
Yeah.
with Surgical, and
Well,
then
with
you
any
don't
of these effects,
right?
yeah.
You don't go down on card for card then.
An observation I would make too. You're right that using these types of hate card. I don't know what the terminology is, like extraction cards. How about that? That's good,
That's
right?
what they are. Yeah.
Yeah.
Surgical is the best because it's 0 mana and instant.
Right.
So the timing's always right if you're smart.
Right.
You know what I mean? You can do it any time,
Yeah.
right?
The time is always right if it's 0 mana and instant.
Yeah,
Like that.
exactly.
I guess the downside though is that it has to be in the graveyard, right?
That's the
Touche.
hard part.
Yeah.
So I mean that's
That's
where
fair,
like
yeah,
stuff
yeah.
like Unmoored Ego or any of the other cards, I'm like, for against decks that we're talking about, dredge or whatever, like especially, or even just combo decks maybe at large, these start to be more important, and having a selection of them in Modern might be a good thing for the particular problem that we're talking about.
There's another big graveyard deck that's kind of blowing up right now. That's the Hollow One deck, right? Where you discard 100 cards and then all of a sudden Hollow Ones are free and you're swinging. And we're also seeing like a little bit of that Arclight Phoenix get into Modern. Not a lot at all, but like it's creeping in at the corners. Are we entering like a Graveyard Matters Modern period right now?
I think we've been in it for. I mean, that's one of the for me. That's one of the defining characteristics of the Modern format is that the ability to use the graveyard as a resource
way higher,
is way higher, and it's a fundamental kind of branch of decks within that environment.
Sure.
There's a whole bunch of decks that try to do that.
What is it, like subgenus or something like that?
Yeah.
I'm thinking of like
Phylum. Maybe
Yeah,
it's a phylum.
yeah, it's a phylum.
It's a huge group.
Linnaean taxonomy.
Yeah, exactly. Because like even Grixis Death Shadow is a deck that really takes advantage of the graveyard through things like, you're trying to play a big Death Shadow, but, it uses Dredge really, to great effect by doing Thought Scours and all kinds of things. There's a whole group of decks that are in there. So that's why I think that basically I'm not too worried about Creeping Chill as part of Dredge, because it can be hated out by things that hate out a whole large group of decks.
Yeah, right, exactly.
As opposed to something that's very small.
It's not a new wing. It's not a new wing. It's just an impressive improvement to an existing deck.
It's like the hate that exists already. We'll deal with this too.
Right.
It'll be fine.
Yeah.
Query though, with the graveyard with the graveyard enabling Modern abilities. Is there any more annoying than Bridge from Below?
So I was going to talk about that actually,
Dude,
because
that's
that's another deck
card.
that you guys have talked about,
That's
or
a card.
that goes in that same bucket you were talking about.
Yeah.
It's sort of
You can't. It's an uncast. You do not want to cast that card. It literally does nothing if you cast it.
If we think of Magic the Gathering as some like grand philosophical exercise, and you have to do like the big thought experiments about the grand archetypes of cards you don't want to cast are like less than 10. Do you know what I mean? Like, and Bridge from Below?
Bridge from Below, yeah.
It's a very unique card.
Yeah, it's so bizarre. I love it though. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, spicy as all get out. But
I got shit on by that card when I was playing casual games in Denver. I think Bofan and Woodrow were running like decks or whatever.
So I have that deck too.
Yeah, it's fucking nasty.
I think it's good. I don't think it's as good as Hollow One, which is part of the reason I would really like Goblin Lore to be reprinted, so I can
There
play
you
Hollow
go.
instead.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
Hollow One's a little more resilient. I think Is It Phoenix has a little bit more ability to do some stuff. Bridgevine is sort of like literally like playing Creature Storm. Like it's basically like, oh my god, I made 20 tokens this time, and then another time you're like, I did nothing. This time.
They have Leyline of the Void, so basically everything I try to do is fucked.
Yeah.
I think the reason that I dislike the Bridge card, well, dislike is a strong word, but the reason I get frustrated with it is the rule that every time a non-token creature you control dies, you generate a zombie, right?
Correct.
I play predominantly in Modern right now Ghost Dad, which I adore, and it turns out that removes a lot of creatures. It's basically like a control deck with like a little combo package inside of it.
Right.
There's nothing worse than fatal pushing your opponent's Viscera Seer or whatever, and then they get, thanks bro, now it's bigger and it's going to bang into you even harder next turn. Ugh, it's brutal.
So the one thing I would say really quick about that is you have to remember the second half of what Bridge from Below says.
Your own creature dying.
Which is if you have if I kill one of your creatures, or you have a creature go to the graveyard, they all leave the graveyard.
Yeah.
So it's maybe you should be fatal pushing your own guys instead, and just taking.
David, I hadn't really thought to myself about how optimal of a line of play fatal pushing my own Jace Vryn's Prodigy can be in the Modern format.
But if they have two Bridge from Belows in the graveyard, it might be the thing you want to do.
I'm just trying to imagine, like, you are as close to my Magic Sensei as exists, and I'm trying to be like, listen, I just 2-for-0'd myself.
So wait, Stan is our coach, and then he's our sensei?
He is my Zen master.
Okay,
he's my sensei for sure. Yeah.
I teach you about the journey within.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. The journey to nothingness or journey to whatever.
Journey to nowhere.
Journey to nowhere, yeah.
Do not cast your spells. Let them cast you.
Right. Exactly.
One with nothing.
one with
That's
nothing.
good. That's good.
Someday I'll show you how to use it right.
Yeah, that's good.
And the whole world along with it.
Okay, well, creeping on from our conversation about Creeping Chill.
Nailed it.
Yeah.
So good.
Top of my game right now.
Yeah.
We're going to move to our final topic of conversation for tonight, which is a segment I like to call Feels Over Reels, Guilds of Ravnica edition. Feels over reels is where you have to look yourself in the mirror and own and accept that sometimes when you're drafting a set, you overvalue cards. You pick cards. Maybe it's due to your weakness, your infirmity of mind, or your desperate attempt to force a particular card into a format. It's just not there, Blush. It's just not going to happen.
Mission
right?
briefing lives.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, dude.
I saw a mono blue mission briefing deck recently that I was like, oh.
We'll talk about that.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you for giving such a perfect example of what I'm talking about. The kind of like miniature survey that we're going to do is for the set release and the limited drafting experience of Guilds of Ravnica. What is the card or cards that have you putting your feels over your reels in terms of overvaluing it or trying to force it in the limited format? Matthew, do you have a card that jumps to mind?
Yeah, one that I've tried to play specifically in limited in Guilds of Ravnica is the black, blue, blue 3/3 Death Touch.
Oh,
hexproof.
okay, yeah.
I just look at that card and I'm like, yeah, all right, I'm gonna win this one.
Yeah.
And every time I pick it, I just get blown out by a Boros deck, just every single time.
It's a little slow. Right?
It is. Yes, I think the mana cost is a real thing for all of the dubs.
Dubs.
Yeah, but also just generally, I feel like I want to be Dimir. I think that's like what I'm feeling in this set.
Sure.
But then every time I pick it, like the more aggressive decks just get underneath me. And so it might just be that like maybe the cards aren't coming around, but I feel like every time I know that I should just go Boros and be done with it.
Yeah, it's a much more effective maybe archetype, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of must answer cards in it. The mentor cards all just sort of like spiral out of control if you let them linger.
Sure.
Whereas like the control-y stuff, good and constructed, not so good in my experience in limited.
Gotcha. Well, David, in the ratio of feels to reels, where are you at with Guilds of Ravnica? What's breaking your heart?
It's so hard for me to do this because we've talked about it a couple times on here, but I'm very, very, like, I'm a huge draft enthusiast.
Yes.
Like, that's the main thing. I love Modern. I like to watch Modern, but I grind drafts a lot when I'm home just hanging out, playing Moto. I've done it on Arena.
Yeah.
So it's really hard for me because I tend to go for, like the most boring, like rock solid picks that I can get. So picking a card that sort of traps me in a bad space is tough because I just love taking 2/2s and combat tricks and stuff like that.
Okay.
So I like that there's a deck like Boros in this format. I do think that Dimir is very good. All of my trophies so far have basically been either Boros or Dimir decks.
Interesting.
So
yeah, that makes sense.
and kind of a little bit in between is it's very good. I think that the truth is, though, going back to what I just said, the things that I probably overvalue in this format right now is if I see a fresh face recruit, I'm like, yeah, I'm doing this.
Yeah.
And there's another card that goes hand in hand with that, and that card is probably Sure Strike, which again is the most boring. These are two CMC,
Yeah.
a 2/1 that has First Strike when it attacks, like an Elvish Archer, and also a combat trick that gets +3/+0 and First Strike when you use it. It costs 2 mana. It's not even a good combat trick, but I just feel like so in command when I put those cards in my deck, so much so that I take them as an indication that Boros is open when I can get them.
Yeah.
And that's the problem, is that they're really not good enough to indicate that
Right, so
that color is open.
your feels over reels is not like myself, someone who sees like a value uncommon and is like, oh, I'm going to build my entire deck around this guild mage and all of a sudden everything's going to fall into place. Your feels over reels is that you see a very basic, playable common card, and then you kind of just assume that that's giving you more information than it is, right?
Correct.
You're
They're
like,
never going to be able to block, you might think to yourself.
Right, exactly.
You
This is a draft where I won't have to deal with defending creatures. It's
Yeah.
going to be fantastic.
Yeah.
Or
you
it's
know?
or it's more like I see one of those pick 6 and I assume, okay, nobody else is in Boros.
Right,
So
yeah.
I'm going to get like 3 more of these. 3 more of each of those cards is what I start to feel like it's a signal, and I don't think it really is a signal that
The
that's
reality is
open.
you're just thirsty for it.
Yeah.
You just want
I just
it.
want to be in an aggro deck.
Yeah, that's right.
Like kind of like what Matt was saying, although like I said, I like Dimir a lot too. I think the card that is really a signal for Boros, by the way, if you want to put the like reels over feels.
Oh.
Like if you see a late pack Sky Knight Legionnaire,
Yeah.
that's when you should be like,
Yep.
okay.
No one's playing red-white if that's going
If
late
that's
in the
going
pack.
6/7, there's probably a good chance that you're gonna get
Yeah.
a good Boros deck if you switch over to it.
That
There.
is a
If I see
monster.
that pick 2 or 3, I'll definitely pick 2 of those up early in a draft. Yeah.
I'm going to move this along. I'm going to ask my very good friend, Eric, Eric, search your heart, search your feelings. What card is giving you feels over reels in Guilds of Ravnica right now?
Well, in Guilds of Ravnica Limited, I'm doing what I do in most limited formats, and at least once each time, I'm going to force mill.
Oh my god.
My
Yes.
feels card here is definitely going to be Drowned Secrets, where when you cast a blue spell, you mill 2.
Blush is so. Drowned Secrets is 1 generic, 1 blue. It's an enchantment.
It is.
That says whenever you cast a blue spell, target player mills 2 cards.
You don't even have to resolve that spell. It just needs to be cast.
It just needs to be cast. Yeah, exactly. How does it feel to be a broken degenerate man?
Oh, it feels great.
Is it good?
I mean,
yeah. Is that...
You have to be opening this pack 1 because everybody else is going for the Drowned Secrets. You're never going to
That's funny. I would love it. Actually, this is the height of the feels over reels. You open pack 1 and you see Drowned Secret, but there's a valuable, actually playable blue card in that pack, and you say, "Oh, it'll be there."
It'll be there.
And so then
Yeah.
you pick the valuable blue common and wait for Drowned Secrets to come around to you. That's
Yeah.
good. Fifth dimensional chess.
This is the thing I love about Eric, though, is that he is like a romantic.
Yeah, truly.
He's like, I love this. I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm just going to do this. And I've played against him plenty of times in drafts where he's been like, turn 2 Drowned Secrets, for example.
Right,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
And I'm like, I'm so going to run you over.
Right.
And then like 6-8 turns later, I'm like, well, I don't have a library anymore. I'm not endorsing this strategy, and not everybody can do it, but like, Eric commits.
I feel like
that's
Mill is that harsh mistress too, though, where it's
She's a bitch. She's not a harsh mistress. She's just terrible.
yeah, it's
you
like,
know?
what is that? And then but some people cozy up to her, and it's a whole nother thing.
What
All
I
I
love
gotta say
about-
is, Sphinx's Tutelage and Guardians of Meletis are the best of friends. If
Yeah.
you didn't play Origins Draft, picking up every Sphinx's Tutelage that you saw, then you were doing it wrong.
Tutelage messed people up in Origins. It was
broken
crazy.
in Limited.
Yeah.
So broken. 40 cards.
So my biggest issue with Mill, and my brother John, whom I adore with my whole heart, we love Mill. We talk about it all the time. We're always trying to make an Esper Mill deck happen. Like Fetch, it's not going to happen, but we're trying. He once kind of like, we were drinking, and he's like, here's the thing about Mill, Scott. Mill players have to look at the numbers 20 and 60 and say that 60 is lower than 20. And I'm like, yeah, kind of.
Nailed it.
Like, yeah,
It's burn where your opponent helps you every turn by taking 1 of their life off.
Right, yeah. It's Mill's mean. Mill's difficult. And
It feels bad to lose too, most of all.
I love losing to Mill because I'm like sympathy winning. You know what I mean? I'm like, yeah, great. Like you're doing the thing I can never
You're
do.
like, aw,
Yeah.
aw, like it'll be okay.
So I don't want to like trot out my own feels too desperately about the Guilds of Ravnica set, but what I will say, I love value uncommon payoffs in 2-color combinations, right? Doesn't matter what set I'm playing. Khans of Tarkir, where you're supposed to be a 3 set, right? I'm still probably playing 2. I'm kind of conservative in that way. My idea of a draft deck is a bunch of decent cards within flavor, within mechanics, in 2 colors. That's what I'm aiming for. Guilds of Ravnica gives us a bunch of guild mages, right? And they're not bad. I'm not saying that they're bad cards or whatever. But I feel like in the back of my head, my self-conditioning about uncommon 2-color payoff cards is so ding, 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 that I often overdraft the guild mages.
Having drafted with you before, that makes a lot of sense.
Right,
I'm like
yeah.
seeing everything click together. I'm like, oh, he does love lieutenant cards. Like where it's just like, oh yeah, there's just those 2 colors. We got some of that. What color? We got some of that. Throw that gold card in there.
Well,
Let's do
don't
it.
you see, Matthew, that it's a 2-color card in the 2 colors that we're playing?
Right.
Yeah.
How could it be bad?
It's as if it was, from divine visitation from the heavens.
That's right, yeah. From God's visit,
Yeah,
I think
right.
is
Yeah,
like
God's
it.
visit,
Right.
yeah.
I'm 100% agreeing with you on those cards, by the way, because
Yeah.
my initial submission
Yeah.
for this category was the guild mages, but then I realized it's supposed to be about me.
Right,
and
right.
I have my own problems with two mana 2/1s.
Yeah.
But I definitely think that the guild mages are bad in the way that you're saying, where people think that they're awesome because they're guild mages, and
they
others
do
said
they
guild
have
mages
2
were
abilities.
incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
These ones are like fine.
they're
I will say-
well-designed cards. I'm happy to see them if I'm playing those 2 colors. I'm not
Yeah.
trying to cast shade or throw shade, cast shade, toss shade. I don't know what I'm doing.
All of them.
Shade,
But
to just shade.
I think that my issue is that I get the feels get over the reels.
Yeah.
When I look at the pack, I'm like, am I in those two colors? Well, auto draft.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to pick. Instead of being like, no, this monocolor removal spell is still much better than those cards.
Right.
Well, I'll tell you what, we've had a great time chatting here on Tap tonight. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Matthew,
Yeah.
you're always a great co-host, and David and Eric, you are as beautiful as you are insightful.
Thank you.
I
Look at this
appreciate your
beard.
time.
I'm
I know.
so jealous. I've been growing it out. I'm like, I need to prop my own beard up just to be sitting next to him.
Mine's casting a shadow on
Yeah,
the
yeah.
lights,
Yeah,
so it's
that's
all
If
right.
you talk about throwing shade, Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I want to thank everyone for tuning in and watching the show today. We're going to be publishing some of our social media information. We've got a Twitter account set up, we've got a Facebook group, and we've got a Patreon. It'll be in the YouTube link below. And just as a preview for the next episode of Tap, which will be coming out almost exactly a month from today, we're going to be joined with one Shane and one Dathan, who are our guests for the next episode. So excited to have them, and we hope you join us for that. So, signing off for everyone on the sofa, as well as for the guy on the chair tonight. Thanks for watching us. Be well.